Aussie Viking to do another video. Now this one's going to be different. So next month, as I'm making this, it's the 24th, I believe. Yes, because everybody's gone crazy about Friday, Black Friday. Even though in Australia we don't really have that, but we have it, but we only have a reason for it because it's cheap as shit, really. But yeah. So today I'm going to start watching the Star Wars films. I've had this for actually months. I bought this like 6 months ago. The newer version of the complete saga with 9 disc set, includes all 6 movies with 40-hour special features and a 90-minute Star Wars spoof. Oh, 90 minutes of Star Wars spoof. So I wonder what that... I don't know if it says. Either way, awesome. And basically I'm going to watch episode 1 to 7. And Last Jedi comes out next month just to get it all... just to get it on and going. So yeah, basically what I'm going to do is going to talk about what I remember about it and then watch the film, come back and tell you what I liked, including deleted scenes. Because for me, I do count the deleted scenes. And deleted scenes, especially with the prequels, do make them better. We'll go right into that when I've started the films. Now, I want to point out this. I'm not going to shit upon the prequels because I love them. I actually enjoy them better than the original trilogy. And a lot better than the Disney fucking films. Like, The Force Awakens is... I'll get to The Force Awakens when I get to The Force Awakens. But don't think I'm going to be happy with it. It's the worst Star Wars film ever made. And I will justify that statement. Trust me, I will justify that statement. But in terms of the prequels, I love them. I do love them more than the original trilogy. That's not to say I don't like the original trilogy. I love the original trilogy. I think the original trilogy is more coherent compared to the original trilogy. But the original trilogy is still a very good band of films. If you know filmmaking and such, and the philosophy of if you've got a story and you think breaking the rules can make your story better, then do it. And that's what George Lucas did with the originals, because... with the prequels, because in the O2 trilogy, it was very simple. Let's be honest here. The original trilogy was very simple. It was a very obvious, simple fantasy sci-fi film, or at least like fantasy elements. It was, you knew who the bad guys were, you knew who the good guys were, and there wasn't really much in between. With the prequels, he takes the in between and makes you go, well, guess what? There's more. That's not to say they're perfect though, and when I get into them, there are deleted scenes on here that make the prequels so much better. Like wow, like whew. Episode 2 has got some good ones. Episode 1's got some good ones. Episode 3, while it's fantastic, and for me the second best Star Wars film behind Empire, there are definitely some scenes that I really hope we can say is canon. And there are some definitely scenes deleted that you can put back in the film. And I really hope we get like a special edition that does that. So, anyway, first up, Phantom Menace. So, from what I remember of the Phantom Menace is... I remember Jar Jar. Now, I don't really hate Jar Jar. Now, I was a kid, obviously, but... I didn't hate Jar Jar. I thought it was fun. He was a kid thing. It was for the kids, like Ewoks, even though they were cannibals, but still. It was fun. He was alright, honestly. I loved his species, though. From the architecture to how they looked and how they acted. I loved them. They were fantastic. Gungans in general are pretty awesome. And I loved everything about it, so... about that side of things. In terms of fighting sequences, I think they're fantastic. I don't understand the OT purists that say that the fighting is over-choreographed and stuff. Well, I mean, just watch this little bit of information here.
Part of my training, I lifted weights, studied martial arts. I also learned kendo for the first time.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
The final battle took weeks of rehearsal and even longer to film the scene.
Take 2, action!
We expanded the lightsaber duel by adding acrobatics and detailed choreography. They even brought in Bob Anderson, England's 1952 Olympic fencer, to fight as Vader.
They had a special stunt Vader helmet that he wore so he could see better, bringing a level of skill to Darth Vader's swordsmanship that otherwise would be lacking.
I kept improving the sword fighting, faster and more intense, as Luke became more proficient in the art of sword fighting. Episode 1 takes place about 30 some odd years before Episode 4, which was the original film.
What is it? Your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
I was looking for a kind of sword fighting that was reminiscent of what was in the movies that we'd already done, but a more energized version of it, because we'd actually never seen real Jedis at work. We'd only seen crippled half droid, half men, and young boys that had learned from these old people. So to see a Jedi in his prime fighting in the prime of the Jedi, I wanted it to be a much more energetic and faster version of what we've been doing.
So I think he wanted something special. I think he wanted the audience to understand where these Jedis came from, what their powers were, and how sophisticated they were in the art of battle.
What I had in mind after watching the first Star Wars films was that you would see that they had studied every single style of swordplay, you know, from epee to kendo. That's what we've gone for. I like that there. That's strong in there, isn't it? You know, kendo movies. Since they had chosen such a short-range weapon, they would have to be so good if they're up against ray guns and lasers. I think it just needed to be much more gritty than it was, you know, much more scary than it was, much faster and much stronger. They have to be constantly in check. There's no room for error in any of the fights. You won't see it because they're so fast, but if you slow them down and freeze-framed them, they can only parry there, or they can only attack there. The moves are so natural, or so correct, it's the only place they can be. That's when kendo becomes a beautiful thing. The speed, balance, the violence. Kendo was everything that Jedi and Sith are.
See? Like, you can complain all you want, but ever since Return of the Jedi, they've been adding more flourishes to fighting. But hey, you know, OT purists are a rant in their own. They are a big rant, I tell you. But overall, yes, fight sequences I loved. I loved Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I loved Qui-Gon. I even liked Anakin because here's the thing. Anakin was a 10-year-old being played by a 10-year-old. And people gave him shit for that. He literally played himself. He has that charm to himself. And he's a kid. Like, some of the logic that people have on the prequels that they shit upon is dumb. It's like, oh, this 10-year-old acts like a 10-year-old. I wonder why. Oh, this 19-year-old acts like a 19-year-old. I wonder why. This young adult acts like a young adult. I wonder why. It's like, we'll get to that rant when we get there. And the reason I actually like the child Anakin was I was a kid when I saw this. I remember the first time I saw this in the cinemas, and I was lining up getting popcorn because popcorn was the best. And I remember I didn't even know these were prequels at the time. I just thought more Star Wars awesome because I did see the original trilogy first. Every time I'd go out, my mum and dad would sit me down VHS. Oh, we're going to a family get together. Aiden sit in front of the TV and watch Star Wars on VHS. Yeah, so I did all that, and when I heard about the prequels, I didn't know the prequels. I remember just standing there in line. Mum was about to get her food, and I looked over and I saw that bit of Anakin walking and his shadow being Vader. I was like, he's Vader. I went nuts. I can't. I was like, whoa, really? Like, whoa. And then I watched it. I loved it. I love the pod racing. I love Darth Maul, and I'll get into why some people I can understand hating Darth Maul, but I'm always someone that look to the future, and I gotta say the future process of what they wanted to do, pretty damn good. But I can understand why people hate it at the time. But yeah, I love Palpatine. I even loved the politics, which I'll get into more depth when I get to episode 3, and then I can look back at the trilogy, prequel trilogy, and be like, there we go. But overall, I loved it. I liked the architecture. To be truthful, George Lucas able to create basically a more open universe in the prequels was fantastic. Let's be honest here. The OG trilogy was very condensed, which made sense in context. The Empire was controlling everyone, controlling everything. They were like fascists and they were dictators and they just controlled everything. And it made sense that it'd be gloom and doom. But prequels were before all that, and the happiness, the light that shone upon everyone, it's a very good contrast to the original trilogy. It's actually very well made. But, I mean, if you're an OT purist or you're just someone who just doesn't see that sort of thing in films, you're not going to like it, which I can understand. You know, in the end, what I'm going to say is my own opinion and my own version of it. You either agree or you don't. That's it. Just don't say I'm a fucking idiot, because, oh boy, I will rant the little shit out of you, huh? Anyway, I'm about to go watch Empire Strikes Back, and I'll be back here and just ready to roll about my thoughts, including deleted scenes, which, from what I remember, there were some good deleted scenes. But overall, I would give The Phantom Menace, from what I remember, and it's been about a year since I've last watched it, around a 7, if I was to give it a score. Now, that's without deleted scenes, and I do count deleted scenes that I feel like don't really go against, or can really go against, what's already done. Like, there's a fight scene in episode 1 where Anakin's fighting Greedo. But it's a good scene because it shows Anakin, even at that age, having that rage, and also having that Qui-Gon father figure that helps him out and stuff like that, which was awesome. And that's a good scene. Don't know why they took it out, but it was a good scene. Stuff like that I can add back in and be like, well, it doesn't really go against, Anakin doesn't go and kill someone or get killed himself or something stupid like that. So it's not really something that you can just throw away in canon, because it doesn't really make sense why you would. So yeah. Anyway, Aussie VIking out. I'll be back in like 2 seconds for you. So I just finished watching The Phantom Menace. Still as good as I remember it, honestly. It's a good film. Anybody that says it's a bad film does not understand a bad film. A bad film is Birdemic. A bad film is The Room. Those are bad films. They are uninteresting. They have bad acting. They have bad special effects. They have bad everything. And it just doesn't come well together. Phantom Menace has great special effects and actually great acting. Yes, there are times where the acting's a bit iffy. But considering that that's from the younger actors, Jake Lloyd, Anakin, 10-year-old Anakin, Natalie Portman, who was, I think, 12, 13, maybe 14 when this film was being made. So, again, she was young. But here's the thing. The original trilogy had that too. The original trilogy had some pretty bad acting. Even the sequel trilogy has bad acting. Look at Kylo Ren talking to Han on the bridge thing. The start of that sentence is flat and undeserving and not really interesting. And then you've got the original New Hope. Luke's kind of annoying. And he's like, but I was going to go to Scotia Station. Oh, I'm never going to get out of here. The acting's not the best in there. Alright? And even on number 2 with Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back, which is a fantastic film, 10 out of 10. But even Han's like, whoa, like, Han, like, he's a child at the start where he's like, oh, what about me? Huh? To Leia, he's like, well, don't you know how you feel about me, your feelings for me. And it's like, why? What's going on here? This is 3 years after New Hope. What the fuck happened? But I get it. I can understand why people don't want to see that, because it's, the original trilogy was first and everyone loves it and all that, and there's nostalgia. But honestly, you take that away and yeah. But onto Phantom Menace. I thought it was great. I do think there were definitely certain scenes, not scenes, but like there are definitely there are deleted scenes that I think should be added back in. But there's certain sections where it's like they could have inserted a bit more. So there was more scenes with Darth Maul, like in the fight with Qui-Gon. There's a bit, and it's only like an extra 10 seconds or so, where he jumps up and fights Qui-Gon on the ship landing pad. Doesn't add too much, but honestly, it was kind of cool. And add a bit more, that extra few seconds more of Darth Maul. And then there's a scene where Darth Maul, before that, was where you see Darth Maul chasing them. Again, doesn't really add too much, and the scene definitely works without the top bit. But it's just a bit more Darth Maul, which is everybody was wanting at the time. Now, what annoys me, people are like, oh, Lucas killed Darth Maul. And it's like, first of all, he had to be killed. The area they had him in, the circumstances that had happened, Darth Maul had to die. Now, what's interesting is Lucas has said, look, we were going to bring him back, but we had to change stuff around, alright? And they were, because I think originally a Sith Lord was going to be Jar Jar. He was going to be a Sith Lord, if I remember correctly, but after the negativity of it, George was like, well, okay, we're going to have to get rid of him, alright? We're going to have to, downplay him. Not get rid of him, but downplay him. And honestly, he's not that bad of a character. Yes, The Phantom Menace had some more childish moments in the original trilogy. Understandable. But in today's day, as I'm watching it now, I'm like, it's less childish than, say, a Marvel film. Alright? So, again, I know that back at this time, Marvel didn't have those sort of films, but nowadays we love that shit. We love childish characters. We love characters that are in a big war battle and they're like, Led Zeppelin, yeah, and what are you the god of again? We like that sort of stuff now, and it's a bit weird that people give Star Wars shit for it, which, I can understand for the time, but now when people watch it and give it shit, it's like, well, hang on. We've got a lot more films like that, with a lot more annoying characters. I think Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy is a lot more annoying than fucking Jar Jar, but that's just me personally. Okay. But then back to the deleted scene stuff. There's actually a fairly good deleted scene after the battle where Anakin Skywalker comes in. And they're like, the pilot's like, well, we're all accounted for. Who was the ship that blew up the giant robot thing? Oh, and it's the kid. And he's just like, hope I'm not in trouble. That wasn't too bad. Like it doesn't add too much to the story, but it kind of adds that little extra element of character, which I think is something that Lucas sort of misses in his prequel films. There's certain elements where there's character, and he's taken them out and put them into the deleted scenes. One of them would be with Anakin fighting Greedo. He's fighting Greedo. Qui-Gon comes in and says, you got to control your anger. Now, it's a very short scene. It's actually a fairly completed scene, but it's annoying because it adds that bit. It shows his anger. It shows he's not good with his emotions, and it shows that the father figure that Qui-Gon was. It also shows how hard it is for him to follow Obi-Wan later on because of the fact that, you know, he had a lot of big father figure moments with Qui-Gon at the time. Another thing I liked, though, was the Amidala thing. I liked that, okay? So the Amidala relationship is interesting. We'll get more into it in Attack of the Clones, which is next. But what's interesting about Amidala is it starts here. Episode 1, everything starts. This is the start of everything for the Skywalker saga, and it's very well done in terms of characters being conniving and strong and just controlling. It's very well done. Fantastically well done. And then there's that start of falling in love that you can tell, because Anakin and Padme were there for the biggest moments of their life. Padme was there with Anakin when he, brought them in. He brings them in to help them from the sandstorm. He's nice to them. He's completely different from Watto, the piece of shit. He helps them out, and he uses them in a way that they use him in a way that they just mesh together. And then there's the end bit where he helps take back Naboo from the bad guys. There is that big, there's that crunch that you can tell. I do think there should have been a scene or two more where they were more friendly, you know, like the scene where he's like, I'm cold, and she helps him out. That was a great scene, and you can definitely piece a lot of it together where it's like, you know, he took them in when they were needing help. He said, I want to help. He's that sort of person. You can definitely piece it all together, and it's a very strong characteristic. This film is very strong with characters. Qui-Gon's amazing. You feel destroyed when he gets, you know, dies. Anakin's mother and his relationship is pretty powerful as well. And when he has to leave, it's so strong because in the end, if you read into it, Anakin's mum is literally saying, what does your heart say? He says, we'll meet again. Then we shall. It's basically saying, follow your heart, which he keeps into his mind. However, Jedi can't do that. And then it's that moment where he loves his mum. His mum's basically saying, you know, follow your heart. That episode 2 and 3 happened, and it's just like, pew. It's insane. It's very well done. There's definitely moments where I feel like, again, deleted scenes do open up and, like, stretch out those moments, which a lot of people would then see it more, because, let's be honest here, if you're going from the original trilogy, there isn't many of those moments where you have to piece things together. More so in the prequel trilogy. I think that's something that a lot of fans can understand. Now, people will be like, well, maybe you're just full of shit, finding all these positives for something that's negative. That's a valid view, but so is mine. My view is very valid, and the pieces are there. Whether or not you see it or believe it is entirely up to you. So, but yeah, overall, I think episode 1 is a solid film. There isn't much that I can really say that's negative. Some edits are kind of like, but that's more representative of the time, you know. Special effects were great. I don't like everybody's like, oh, the prequels are all CG. They weren't. There was more practical effects in episode 1 than there was in the whole entire original trilogy. That is true. Like right now, I'm gonna put photos up of all the models they did and such. And this is throughout 1, 2, and 3. Okay, the special effects are good. It's the frame blending that they had trouble with, and yes, some CGI does look iffy, but that was for the time. But when you get practical effects and CGI mixed together, like Starship Troopers and a lot of other early 90s films to late 90s films, it just molds together and is a very good looking film. Even for today's standards, I think it's fantastic. But again, people are really annoyed because it's CGI. What are you doing? We need practical. And it's like, trying to explain that shit to fans who are just gullible, idiotic, and nonsensical. I'm really bad at saying that name. Basically, the people that just do not have an opinion that you can freely give, and they're like, I don't care, my opinion over yours, stuff like that. It's like, you can at least listen to what I have to say. They're the ones that have no idea what they're talking about. They're the ones that are just like, no, it's not my style, it's not the original trilogy, and they're not smart fans. Like, I'm sorry, they're not. And I could go on a rant about OT purists. I could go on a rant of the people that just want the original trilogy. You know what you get when you get the original trilogy? You get the fucking Force Awakens, which is the worst Star Wars film. And oh my god, I cannot wait to get let loose on that film when I get to it. Not the worst film, and I gotta say this, even a bad Star Wars film is a good sci-fi film. And that goes for if you think the prequels are bad, or any original trilogies are bad, it goes for that. You can say they're bad Star Wars films, but they are good sci-fi films in the end. So overall, I would give The Phantom Menace around an 8. A solid 8. I think it's a solid 8. And with certain deleted scenes in, it's more of a solid 8. Not quite a 9, not quite a 10. But it's a lot better than a lot of people are saying. I do wish we got... Well, it depends. So we did get more Maul later on in the Clone Wars and such, and he's a really fleshed out character. But I also look to the future. So look at it like this. When Darth Maul died, he came back in the Clone Wars and he was resurrected. Not only does that show the power of the dark side, how it can bring back the dead, which is not an impossibility for this universe, him dying also gave us Dooku, which again, this old guy who's so old and powerful is able to beat younger Jedi and even go toe-to-toe with Yoda. It really shows the power of the Force and the dark side in general, which I like. If you look to the future sort of things, it added so much, and it all kind of happened because we had Darth Maul die. The Ruler 2 and all that, Darth Maul died, we got Dooku, who was just a badass, okay? There's stuff like that. Another thing before I go is the midichlorians. So a lot of people give so much shit to the midichlorians, and it's like, are you so fucking thick that you do not understand the idea of midichlorians? Every single fucking Star Wars fan just complains about them. It's like, the Force is still the Force. The Force is still that crazy-ass dimensional thing that exists. The midichlorians are literally a way of saying, look, they're symbiotic. They reside in all of us. It's how the Jedi can, find out if you're Force sensitive and such. It's a way to, kind of like a scientific way to understand the Force, but it's not the Force. Midichlorians are a species that live in everyone that are connected to the Force, but they're not the Force. It's a symbiotic nature, right? It does not destroy the fantasy side of the Force. It doesn't make it more scientific. It's literally in between. And it's annoying how many fans do not understand that. Because it even says in the film, it's like, are you not listening in the film? I know Star Wars, something as big as Star Wars is going to go crazy with fans, but it's... I'm going to go on a rant here, and I can't. I'm not going to go on a rant. I'm going to go watch episode 2, do another video to this, even though this is now 12 minutes plus the first part, so this will probably be one video. Fair enough. Anyway, I love The Phantom Menace. I think there's some critics that are acceptable and some critics that are bullshit, insane, and make no sense. From art to just even the storytelling, how it's a big long journey of starts at a planet, all the stuff in between ends at the planet sort of idea. It's a very fun journey. I do think this is the weakest of the prequels. I do think the second one is better, and even the third one is far superior than these two, but it's still a fun romp. It's still a solid 8. Now I'm up to Attack of the Clones, which I do love. I do. I love the idea of the clones, the big battle of the clones. I love Anakin being a young 19-year-old he's a 19-year-old. Just like how Anakin was in the first film as a 10-year-old. He acted like a 10-year-old. Anakin in this acts like a 19-year-old who doesn't listen to shit. Exactly, 100%. And I loved it. I really did, I gotta say. I love the whole, like, who's trying to kill Padme and why. And you come and piece it together and you're like, holy shit, this is bigger. I love how elements from the first film come into this one, and they set up for a badass third film, which we got. So, I'm going to go watch number 2, and I'm going to go and do an Attack of the Clones video next. I will see you all in Valhalla.